competitive market, right? I'm not a bad person for doing that, but businesses do that all the time. It's not a black and white choice between regulation and deregulation. Mm-hmm. It's a choice between what is the social interest of how are the consumers best protected, right? If you're in a totally monopoly market like a utility, you protect the consumers by setting rates. If you're in a totally deregulated market like the market for avocados, you protect the consumer by making sure that there's no one who has monopoly power. You regulate in both cases. It's just a different regulatory tool, right? But I think a lot of what gets billed as deregulation in the public discourse is really a recommendation for anarchy, right? And I mean that in the literal sense of the word. When we deregulated California power markets and Enron came in and blew things up and gamed the system, the problem was that we didn't replace price setting with antitrust enforcement. It just became a Wild West scenario, and the entity with the biggest muscle won the day. That's not consumer protection. That's just anarchy.
Geez, it would be nice to have people in Congress who can have discourse around these things.
Well, give me till November. We'll make sure it happens. At least one of us.
The other issue I wanted to touch on, just because it's so much in the news right now, and because you mention it on your website, is immigration reform. So obviously immigration is just a huge, huge topic right now. But I know that you worked with the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. And so I'm wondering sort of what your ideas around immigration are. I think, there's a lot of discourse right now sort of painting Democrats as wanting open borders or something. And obviously I think that's a little bit unfair. But I'm wondering sort of what you think Congress could be doing to make the entire immigration system work better.
Well, let me maybe first start with, it's easy to get really depressed about the current immigration conversation, but I think let's at least lay out some cause for optimism that the things that have truly made our country great can be used to make it great again. And let's be honest, unless you're an Iroquois, you are descended from illegal immigrants, right? and we had this. We've basically built this amazing country because we've had this, not always perfectly applied, but this awesome filter where we were the land of opportunity. We, for many people in the world, the majority of the world, I would submit to you, remain the land of opportunity, where if you want to have a better life, if you want, some significantly more equal protection than you have at home, some significantly greater opportunity to put your entrepreneurial talents to work or to be not discriminated against because of your political views or your religion or your sexual preference or whatever else it is. America's been a pretty great place. And we have attracted people who put their talents to work here because we gave them a place. And we have basically, stolen brains and talent from the rest of the world to our great benefit. And that's a great thing, right? That's something to celebrate. Alexander Hamilton, it's all the way back. What is horribly depressing in the current context is that we are basically having an immigration conversation with a kidnapper in every sense of the term. Mm-hmm. What we're doing to kids at the border is kidnapping. The entire reason we're having a DACA conversation is because the Republicans failed to get comprehensive immigration reform done, then failed to even get the fallback proposition that was the DREAM Act. And so Obama, thank you, Obama, at least did an executive order on DACA. Mm-hmm. And Trump took that executive order hostage for a stupid bloody wall, right? And so now we're having this conversation around how do you best negotiate with a kidnapper? And we can get really caught up with that, and we should be righteously angry and tearful at what that's doing. But I think if we back up and say, what were we trying to do 10 years ago with comprehensive immigration reform? And what can we still do? And there were a lot of good ideas in that bill. Do we need to, make sure that people we don't want to be in our country, we keep out? Of course we do. Like I don't think anybody on the left or the right suggests that we should open up our borders to, every person who would like to do us harm. But let's be honest, the overwhelming majority of the people on the planet are fundamentally good people. Mm-hmm. Right? And when we block everybody, we do vastly more harm than good to us. I think what our immigration policy has always done well, maybe not as much as it should, but has always done well, is we've always prioritized family reunification and refugee resettlement and asylum seekers to give people a better life here, and a lot of people have been the beneficiary of that. We could do more of it, witness, our paltry number of Syrian refugees, mm-hmm. but we've done that pretty well. What we have always done poorly is that we have always put far too high a priority on the country that people come from rather than the skills they bring with them. And, speaking as an employer, it was maddening that if we had two H-1B visas or possible H-1B visas who applied to us, one was from Canada and the other one was from Chad, it was vastly easier to get the visa for the person from Canada. And it had nothing to do with skills and just with country of origin. And, the only thing that's really changed over our history is which country we think we don't like, right? We didn't like the Irish, then we didn't like the Italians, then we didn't like the Jews, then we didn't like the Chinese. We change who we don't like, but there's always someone we disfavor. And so I think we would be well served to completely get rid of country of origin as a basis for screening people, replace it with, equal consideration of skills that the economy needs, but do that while still recognizing that family reunification, refugee resettlement, asylum seekers make us sort of model of the kind of values that we'd like the rest of the world to hold, and bring pretty good people to our country.
Yeah, I work in higher education, and so we certainly care a lot about bringing the best people to the country and making that easier and not harder.
How have your international applications changed in the era of Trump?
We haven't seen the effect yet because our admission cycle starts so early, but I would not be at all surprised if we see it in the next cycle. Certainly something that people are very mindful of, that we could start to see it.
I ask because I sit on the an advisory board for my graduate school. It's graduate engineering school, and it's predominantly international, and we saw 2 years in a row 30% declines in international applicants when Trump came in. And it's just frightening. The dean said he needed to start thinking about us as a safety school because the best students were deciding to go study in England or Canada or Germany or somewhere where they didn't have as many things to fear as they have in the Trump-led United States.
Yeah, and among other things, it's hard to see how that's good for our economy if people start to go to school elsewhere.
Exactly.
It's bad for a lot of reasons, but even if all you care about is the economic impact, it's bad economically.
Exactly. It's one of the crazy things about, and it's why I said at the start that I feel like the Republican Party is sort of abandoned its principles, that if you are completely greedy and selfish, you should want us to be the country that steals the best talent from everywhere else in the world. Mm-hmm. You should want us to be the country that spends as little as possible on energy and therefore, oh, by the way, reduces CO2 emissions. You should want us to be the country that has the lowest possible cost of healthcare. And the Republican Party doesn't stand for any of those things. And I could justify all those on selfish reasons, right?
Selfish for the country, not selfish perhaps for the few individuals who are looking out for themselves.
Yeah, and I'm not I'm not trying to be mean-spirited about it. It's just that if you're not looking for the win-win, too often you end up with lose-lose.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about winning. So, so on the downside, your opponent has a massive, massive war chest, but you've also raised quite a lot of money. And I get the sense that you have a really big volunteer army of people that are out and campaigning and working on your campaign, canvassing and phone banking. Is that sort of your strategy for not being able to compete with the dollar amounts, is to compete at the volunteer level?
Well, number one, let's not concede the dollar amounts in the first instance. Undeniably, we have a massive amount of volunteer energy. We've got 2,700 people who are volunteering for us at this point. We've had 69,000 people who have contributed some amount of money to the campaign. And, by contrast, Roscoe has more than half of his money from corporate PACs, and I've yet to meet someone who isn't paid to work for him. So we have huge advantages there. But even on the money side, the total amount, the only real reason that Roscom has any money advantage is because he didn't have to fight a primary. The amount of money he finished, he started after our primary. He started with $2.5 million. That was about the same amount as raised by all 7 candidates who were running in the primary. And if you think about it, if somebody calls you and asks you to contribute to a candidate in a 7-way primary, there's a 6/7 chance you picked the wrong horse. Right? So the fact that he raised the same amount as all 7 candidates is a testament on how unloved he is, especially when you say that half of that came from corporate PACs who just give to incumbents, right? So really he raised half as much. We have now, with the extra $800,000 we raised in the last quarter, Roscom raised $940 in the last quarter. So we're basically doing, just about neck and neck right now. And again, I'm not getting corporate PAC money. We've now raised more than anybody who's ever challenged him by a significant margin. So I'm pretty confident that we will be competitive on the money, but I have to catch up with the fact that he started with a cash advantage because he didn't have a primary. I had to spend $1 million in the primary. But those, to some degree, you need, Chicago's an expensive media market, and you need money to be on TV to introduce yourself to people. We'll have plenty of money for that. Beyond that, if you are a person who 81% of the electorate says if the election were held today would not vote for you, which is where Roscom is at. If you're a person who is less popular than Donald Trump in a district where Donald Trump is only 37% popular, you need a ton of money to rebrand yourself as someone other than who you are. And so that's what Roscom is raising money for, and that's how he's spending money. And it makes me rather skeptical about the character of someone who will spend 2 years voting one way and then not have the courage to stand up and acknowledge it. Mm-hmm. But it also means that he has to raise a lot more money than I do to accomplish the same end.
All right. Well, is there anything else that you want to make sure our listeners know about you or your district?
I guess just if folks want to get involved or want to reach out, the website is castenforcongress.com, CASTENFOR Congress.com. And then the last thing is just to encourage, people all around the country, whether in this race or others, or looking at, up ballot, down ballot races. We as a country remain the country that overwhelmingly voted in favor of Hillary Clinton. We are better than we think we are, but we're not as good as we thought we were the day after we elected a black president for the first time. So don't lose faith, but stay committed to all those races, because to extinguish Trumpism, it's not enough to win the House and win the Senate. We need to win by massive margins so that there are Republicans of character who feel comfortable standing up and opposing the sort of toxicity that Trump has brought into the party. Because the thing that scares me more than anything else right now is not that there are not Republicans of character, but that those Republicans of character have 3 choices. They can either change parties, stand up and scream that this is inappropriate, or quit. And I have yet to identify any Republican who has done anything other than quit. Mm-hmm. And for us to empower Republicans to take one of those first 2 doors, we have to completely demolish them up and down the ballot this cycle so that people say you actually cannot win anymore on Trumpism.
So we will put on our website links to your website and your social media. People can go to your website and click on the blue volunteer button or the red donate button, or both. I know a lot of Chicagoans who are like, what can I do? What can I do? I live in a blue place. Well, you can drive out to the suburbs.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, Kelly.
Yeah, you too. Thanks so much. Thanks for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Imunari, and we're using it with express permission of the band. Our logo and all original artwork is by Matthew Weflin and is done expressly for Two Broads Talking Politics. We can be found on our website at twobroadstalkingpolitics.com. You can reach us by email at twobroadstalkingpolitics@gmail.com, on Twitter at twobroadstalk, on Facebook and Instagram, and you can support us on patreon.com. You can find our podcast on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, iHeart.